another day in the life.
I ain't getting out of bed today.
Keep waking up from the previous night.
Hey, today we're going to preview some really exciting devices coming out towards the end of this year and then the beginning of next year, both from Wacom and Dell, to try to make some sort of comparison and help you make a decision on which you should be saving your money for and what we think the pros and cons will be based on what's out already. So currently we're watching the preview announcement from Wacom on their new 24-inch Cintiq Pro and the 32-inch Cintiq Pro, which are really just larger versions of the already released 13-inch Cintiq Pro and the 16-inch Cintiq Pro. The main difference obviously being the 13-inch was 1080p, and they moved up to 4K with the 16-inch model. Now this is no doubt a response to the pressure from some of the other Chinese manufacturers, Unova, UG, and some of these other devices that are coming out at a $600, $700, $800 price point that are really starting to make Wacom feel the heat a little bit as far as value and things like that, for you spending your money on these drawing displays. So Wacom had to, at some point, step up their game. They've been stagnant forever, and the result is we're seeing some screens and some panels now in the 4K display space, something we haven't seen before in a drawing display, an increase of pressure, pixels per inch, and all these things we'll talk about. Below, we're going through the trailer for the Dell Canvas, which is marketed as a budget sort of 27-inch Wacom EMR based drawing tablet. You can see them going through it now, and I'm not really sure you can call this a budget item. It's coming in at about $17.99. That's without a VES amount. We'll go through some of those pros and cons in a second, but basically what you're looking at is the Wacom QHD sort of rebranded with additional gesture features. I think it's 20 points of gesture or something like that, Dell is saying. This was pitched at CES earlier this year, and there's been a few delays. I think Dell probably should have got this out on time a little earlier. I don't think it's a coincidence that Wacom has made their announcement before this thing has been released, especially since it is a direct competitor to their own 27-inch QHD, which this thing is basically just a mirror of, other than it comes with the Surface Dial inspired Dell totems, which I think is one of the reasons this thing got delayed to begin with, because they had problems with it. Here's a high-res picture of the Dell Canvas off their website. You can see the pen. I have another picture. It's a little bit more high-res than this to show you the differences between the pen and the Cintiq Pro Pen 2, which all the Cintiqs now come with, the Cintiq Pros rather. There's the Surface Dial totem, which I mentioned before. The back of this thing has a flap. Dell says it's meant to be used, on a desk flat and not mounted to any kind of mount. They've sort of gone back now and made a VES mount for this thing, and we'll cover that because I think the thing is stupid. This is a much better and clearer picture of what the pen looks like. It's sleek, it's traditional, it's a good form factor, I think, and this picture also shows that the Dell Canvas does in fact come with two of these totems. One's a smaller one. I'm not sure if they're used together or separately or whatever. And you can see the USB-A ports on the side, which is something the Cintiq Pros are lacking. This next picture here is what I believe is the first actual screenshots of the 24-inch and 32-inch Cintiq Pros. I don't think this has been released by Wacom. I believe I found it on Reddit or something like that. If they're not official pictures and they're just concepts, they're pretty close to what they'll actually be. You have to figure these things are probably close to being manufactured already. Pictured at the bottom for comparison is a 16 Pro 16-inch. You can get an idea of the size difference by looking at this thing. The 32-inch looks just gargantuan compared to the 16-inch. I'm not sure who they're marketing that towards. The 27 QHD is enormous as it is. I can't imagine the size of this 32-inch, especially because Wacom is still using the edge-to-edge glass, which also should help with the parallax issues of the prior Cintiqs. We'll have to see when they come out exactly if they're able to bridge the gap as much as they were on the 16-inch Pro and also the Mobile Studio Pro, which there's virtually no parallax at all. There's still some lag in those models, but again, those things can be fixed with driver, and they're sort of machine specific, dependent on what your rig is. What I find most interesting, besides the actually seeing these things, is on the 16-inch you'll notice what looks a little bit more than a concept is a slimmed down version of the Express Key remote. I have the Express Key remote. I never reviewed it. It's just a remote with a bunch of buttons on it. But what I don't like about it, and what I don't like about the Mobile Studio Pro and some of the dials, is they're way too sensitive really for brush size and zoom and stuff like that. You literally touch the thing and boom, your screen is gigantic. You can adjust it in the driver, but I never found it to be really that useful or perform that great, I should say. I wonder if they fixed that problem on the smaller version. It looks a lot nicer. It's got just as many buttons as you might need for some shortcuts. So again, really a quick comparison between the, starting from the 13-inch Cintiq Pro all the way to the 32-inch. I don't have the 27-inch in here, but I mean, we're going to cover it in a second, the actual display sizes and the PPI and all that. But this gives you, just a high-level view of what you're talking about here. The 32-inch is just massive. I mean, anybody who's had a 24-inch Cintiq even, those are pretty big, requiring that massive stand in the back just to, move it back and forth. The 32-inch, I don't even know if that could be VESA mounted, depending on the weight of the thing. So, I mean, I guess we'll have to see. Here's sort of where we get to brass tacks, so to speak. I cut out the 13-inch version because this is mainly for people who are going to use these as desktop displays and are interested in the larger sizes, not necessarily the smaller mobile market. But starting with the 16-inch Cintiq Pro, which went 4K, one of the things that gets most overlooked with the increase in resolution to sort of display size is PPI. Now, PPI is pixels per inch, and what does that really mean? Well, it means when you zoom in, you're going to see more of your actual artwork and less actual pixels, which is really annoying if you haven't experienced it. Some of the older Cintiqs and the Chinese knockoffs, they're pretty bad in the PPI department, and if you figure now your average smartphone is 400 to 500 PPI, there's really a massive drop-off when you're talking about something that's in the low hundreds, which at this point is pretty poor. So starting with the 16-inch 4K model, we can see the PPI is all the way up to 238, which is just fantastic. I mean, it's going to be the highest PPI you can get aside from the Mobile Studio Pro, and is really a selling point for that model. The 22-inch numbers I'm taking from the 22 HD that is not being refreshed at this time, and the PPI is pretty poor. Resolution's 1080p, PPI is only about 103, and I think I rounded up even to get that number. So the one advantage there is you're going to see the price go down. Currently, I think the non-touch is somewhere around $16.99. You're going to see that drop, especially if you're just looking for size. The 16-inch model is, $1,500. So, I mean, if you're just looking for a bigger size, that may be an option for you. However, you're still going to have the same parallax issues and of some of the older Cintiq displays, but sometimes it's just size matters, right? The 24-inch PPI gets bounced up to 183, which is really good, and is, I think, the sweet spot in the whole line of displays. It's also coming in at 4K, and the price, I believe, is about 2K even, I think they're saying. Next up is sort of the Dell Canvas and Wacom 27-inch QHD. We're going to say it's about the same as far as resolution, because it is, and the PPI is going to be about the same. I think Dell is saying it's 111, but in the calculator I used it came out to be 108 and change, but you're not going to notice that. But for a 27-inch display, that PPI is kind of poor. When you're zooming in, you're going to see those pixels. So depending on if that's something that bothers you or not, the argument I'm going to try to make is that the 24-inch, even at a higher price, may actually be the better buy. And then finally we have the 32-inch, which the PPI gets knocked down somewhat because, the screen size is increasing and you're still at the same resolution. 137 is not bad, considering, the 22 inch is 103. I mean, people can live with it, but you know, maybe when you're getting at that size of a screen, you know, we need to start talking about 5K or, you know, even higher if you really want to get the PPI to a point where it's competing with something like the 16-inch or the 24-inch. Finally, we're not really talking about levels of pressure because most of these displays, the 16-inch, the 24-inch, and the 32-inch are all, you know, coming in at, you know, 8,000 plus levels of pressure. I don't even think that's fully supported by applications, and most of the people who have tested it in 16-inch don't notice that much of a difference. The 22-inch is still your standard 2048 levels of pressure sensitivity. I think the Dell is the same, the 27-inch. They haven't really specified exactly what the levels of pressure are, so we're going to assume it's 2K like the older version. So while on paper seems like a massive sort of jump, you know, between 8,000 and 2,000, I don't think in reality it's that big, unless you're, you know, maybe an inker and you're looking for those, you know, really different levels of pressure, or I just don't know. I think once you're passing 2,000 levels of pressure, I just don't think the jump is that big. But I mean, we'll have to see in reality when these applications get updated, and to see if it's a massive difference maybe for painters. Here they are side by side. The Dell Canvas coming in at $17.99 seems like a great buy. Dell, is some of the testers who are out there have already said the parallax is much better than the Cintiq 27 QHD. This seems like a bargain at $17.99 compared to the Cintiqs, so it's a sure win, right? Yeah, wait a minute. What the hell is this stupid thing? Well, I'm going to explain it to you. So when Dell first comes out with the Canvas previews, then they start their pitch about how this is supposed to be flat and everything like that. I guess they didn't figure that some artists like to actually mount this on a VESA mount. So with a bunch of bitching and whining and complaining, I guess they went back to the drawing board and decided, well, we need to make this thing be able to fit, you know, an Ergotron arm or something like that. So instead of actually changing the actual Dell Canvas itself, what they came up with is this ginormous mounting bracket that costs $200. Yeah, $200, which is actually more than the Ergotron arm itself. So when you add this, if you're a person who needs to mount these things to, you know, an Ergotron arm, you're adding $200 to the price, which brings it up to $2,000. Now, going back to the argument I wanted to make for the 24-inch Cintiq Pro and why maybe you should wait for that is Dell has delayed the shit out of this 24-inch. This thing was supposed to be out months ago. Now they're saying September. It's almost like a pre-order that's up there. By the time this thing actually releases, you know, mid to late September, you're only a couple of months away, hopefully, from the Cintiq 24-inch model coming out, which is a much higher resolution at 4K, sports a higher PPI right out of the box. So, you know, future-proofing USB-C ports on the sides. We're not really sure if the Dell Canvas even supports that. Some people have had issues with the only USB-C ports on the Cintiq Pro 16 models and the Mobile Studio Pro, but still, as far as future-proofing and such, I mean, you do have that option. Comes with the Pro Pen 2, the additional levels, 8,000 levels of pressure sensitivity, if that means anything to you. It's the same price. So when we go back to the screenshot here of showing exactly how much real estate you're losing from 24 to 27 inch, it's really not that much to justify just spending the same amount of money for the less resolution. It's something new for Dell. The value, most likely, we've seen Wacom technology and other devices before, and the value doesn't hold up long term. If you go on eBay and start searching for, you know, even a 21 UX, you know, they're still going for $600, $700, $800, you know, $900 if they're in great shape. So the Cintiq brand, the value holds up much longer. So from an investment standpoint, you really can't go wrong going with the Cintiq name if you're going to spend the $2,000 anyway. The one thing I could say is, since the Canvas is made by Dell, there's more likelihood you're going to find deals on it, you know, maybe Black Friday, coupons and such like that. You know, you might wind up getting the thing closer to $1,500, and then I think it becomes a decision. You know, and if Dell really hits it out of the park with this and they start making different size models, which I think they would, you might see them come closer to being a true competitor. Right now, I kind of keep them in a budget line, certainly better than the Chinese models. It's still Wacom EMR, which is still the best, beats any of the Intrig and Wacom EAS and all that other garbage. But I mean, if you have to spend $2,000, I just don't see how you don't go with the Cintiq brand name and all of the other features that I mentioned. So hopefully this video helped you out. I think the only game changer would be if somehow Wacom, I mean, they can't even get a standout for the Mobile Studio Pro and the Cintiq Pro 13-inch and 16-inch. But if somehow their release date changes from January, say, to the summer, and the Dell Canvas is rave reviews and all things like that, and they're smart enough to get the price point down to $1,500 and maybe throw that stupid Vesta stand in, I think you're talking about a different game. My recommendation right now would be, probably the 24 inches is a sweet spot, especially eventually they'll run deals on it. And if you have, a good workflow now on, a 22 inch, which is pretty much the standard out there, I don't think it's a big, leap to go right to the 24 inch. You're still getting more real estate. And the only thing 27 inch from the screenshot is getting you is, a lot more of the sidebar. And I know it matters. It's just at the same price point, I don't see how you don't go with the 24 inch Cintiq. That's all I have for today. Hopefully you guys liked the video. The last time I did one of these previews for the Mobile Studio Pro, I got killed in dislikes. So you can like this video and subscribe. We'll be following all these different tablets as they come out and release, and hopefully have more info as we go along. And I'll see you later. Thanks for watching.
Another day, damn, keep waking up from the